We are at number 4, the consent agenda. And
Consent agenda.
would someone like to make the motion to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Director Richmond, second by Director Rich Jones. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carried. That was 4.1.1 through 4.1.5, the benefit of paying attention. 4.2 correspondence for information. Remove that as a block. That was all under.
That's on the consent.
Any business arising from the minute? None. 6.1.1.
I'd like to move, can I move all three that's at the same time?
Yes, ma'am.
I will then, please.
Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Richmond. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. 6.1.2, request for funding for the Wedgewood Community Playground.
I'll move that.
Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Pettengill. Question?
So, yeah, if I understand, this is spending public money on private refers, do I misunderstand that?
A little bit. Sort of a,
It is a strat, it's not SLRD on property. That's not where it comes in.
Cause yeah, I was just like, do we have precedent for putting public playgrounds into private strata properties, and it's been uncomfortable with
that's
this
a
one.
good question. Should we bring Director Butt in to answer that question, please?
Well, we are using their amenity funds to pay for it. Money that they put forward as amenity funds. There you see recreation.
Is it, that's strict?
Let's just wait till the director gets here.
If you're asking about precedent, in Black Tusk community is a strata. Pinecrest community is a strata. In past years, we have funded activities at the lake, dredging, considerable amount of money. We've funded picnic tables and things like that. If we don't do it, then we've got taxpayers with no access to money because they belong to a strata. People can go into that lake.
Except you wouldn't, let's just get the director here to answer the question.
I believe, okay, he's got it. I was gonna ask for you, but you got it.
Okay. A question from Director Pettengill regarding use of funds on strata property. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, just wondering, I guess, so is this public funds on a private strata proposed park, and is it from a tax service where the payers are exclusively the strata, or is there a larger payers in? Just trying to understand the private public sort of relationship here.
Gotcha. I don't know about the funding side, how that would this is their strata property, so they can probably do whatever they want with it, and they it's not a public, doesn't have to be a public park. So
Sorry. I did ask this question and as I understand it, this is to fund the society, which is going to use the strata, which is going to use that for the playground. Our liabilities are removed from them. They're overall, I did ask, do we pay for any operations, or nope, that's all part of their strata. It could be in 10 years' time, they write a letter asking for more funding to the Ferris wheel, merry-go, whatever they're called. But that's outside of this. So our contribution would only be giving the strata money for the purposeful project and remove our liability. But it is on private. There's no taxes involved.
And so would we ask for or receive a public right of way, or expect or want any public access if we're putting public investment into this, or?
That is an excellent question.
it's something we could ask them for in exchange for that funding.
I have Jenna, then Tony.
Overall, I would support exploring that direction, especially as we continue to receive applications for different forms of stratification around what is existing there. Hope that any sort of investment in amenities would be available to all those who might call this future neighborhood home. If additional development is available, so I would hope that there'd be a public right of way for using amenities for private improvement. Tony?
I know. You don't like me comparing electoral areas with municipalities, but in a municipality, if you have a strata, it exists within the municipality, and you can tell them, well, you're private, you look after everything yourself. But in an electoral area, there's at least two in my area, plus this Wedgewood one, where the community is a strata, the whole community is a strata. And I think we have to look at that differently than we would if it were a strata within a larger community. I know when we put the money into the lake, one of the things I looked at was, does the public have access to the lake? They do. Technically, it's there. If you want to park and walk in there, you can. But in practice, nobody does. And so it's the people in the two stratas that end up using that. But they, to be fair to them, they are paying taxes. And I think in the case of the whole community strata situation is fair. Now, would I support a grant to Oliver's Landing Strata Council in Ferry Creek? No, I told them that years ago. No, because they're different. They have access to the whole community. Everybody in the community has access to them. If there's any question coming for Oliver's Landing Strata Council and the other strata council we have at Ocean Crest, it goes through the FCCA, and then they can decide whether it is full community benefit. The Black Tusk is that's it. There's no other entity there.
Is there a motion on the fund? Okay, I'd like to move support of the funding with the requirement that public access be given to park further.
Second.
I have it moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Crompton. Comments? Favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, 6.1.3, a request for funding from the Primitive Valley Trail Association Trail Maintenance Apprentice Proposal of 2025. Someone like to move this?
I will move that.
Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Demare. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And the PBIS requests, 6.2.1, or request for decision on the recreation service report. And shall we give this first, second, and third reading? Moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Mack. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And then that this same bylaw 1914 be moved and adopted. Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Richmond. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. 6.2.2, a direction request from the PDIF one-time funding requests, and there are many. We manage them all in one. Fantastic. Would someone like to move these? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Richmond. Any comments? All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And bylaws.
I don't think director, but predicted how bad that would. That's it.
Yeah. Give them that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here. Very cool. Does that help?
Okay, we're on 7.1.
Interesting. Thank you.
Request for decision Permanent North Water Rates and Regulations bylaw 1913-2025.
I'm happy to go. Questions if there's.
Thanks to the chair. I am curious if there's an intention to go towards metered charges, so this keeps us at kind of a flat rate, but if we're putting in water meters, is the intention not to go in that direction?
There is no intention at this point. I think if we did switch to metered rates, we would need to collect those years of data anyways to understand, what those rates should be at. So at this time, and I specifically pulled out any reference to metered rates, just because there's no plan on.
Okay, can I clarify then that we will be collecting the data at least so we can start to move in that direction, should we choose to?
Yes, absolutely. So we are collecting data, and that's part of the grant requirement for 6 years.
Okay, thank you. And my other question was around the fee schedule. We currently have the same cost for single unit homes versus multi-unit buildings. And we know that multi-unit buildings are typically more efficient. There's typically less outdoor space. They're more efficient in the use of water infrastructure because you have more units of the same linear pipe. And so why wouldn't we differentiate the cost for a single family home versus a duplex or a townhouse?
I think there are no, I think everything in this area is single family, with the exception of there is also the trailer park as well. And that would, I believe, go under commercial.
Separate? Okay, so the first that, I have somebody move that. Okay, seconded. Okay, so moved and seconded, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. And then the second that, moved, seconded, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Thank you. 7.2. Request for decision, Blackcomb Snowmobiles Limited, an electoral area D amendment bylaw number 1827/2024. Yeah.
Yes, Chair. I believe we have Ms. Koterniak on. She'll be speaking to this.
Good afternoon, Adam.
Yes.
Can everyone hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, now.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm a planner analyst with the SLRD. I can briefly speak to this application. It comes to you now for a third reading and adoption after having had a public hearing as per the resolution from the second hearing. The hearing was held on April 30th, 2025, and there were no members of public in attendance. And to date, we have not received any comments or concerns regarding this application. This report also addresses questions that were raised by the board at second hearing, including matters related to socioeconomic impact, a QP report regarding environmental matters, and comments regarding the Chickamus Community Forest management plan, among others. And yeah, so that's the quick summary. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Any questions from anybody?
No, move that first that.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'd asked about if there'd been follow-up engagement with Squamish Nation. And I didn't see anything in the report. I can't remember if we'd spoken to this. I did see that in 2017, there was a letter of support, but has there been any more recent communication with Squamish Nation on their perspective on this?
So through the chair, there has not been further communication.
Okay. Okay. And then the employee housing piece, I didn't recall that from before. Can you speak to what that allows or enables employee housing? Could that be employee housing for other businesses or what sort of scoping do we have on that use?
Through the chair, so employee housing would be housing for any employees in the region.
And as proposed, then, is there any restriction on the number of units or size? Like, could this be a 400-unit employee housing apartment complex or?
Through the chair, yes, so there is a restriction on the size, as you can see in the attached bylaw under Appendix F. I believe it was 3 units. Let me just double check here. Yeah, so 3 dwelling units.
Thank you.
Is there a speakers list?
No.
Okay. Any other questions?
I was moved, yeah,
You want to move it?
yes, please. Second.
Great, thank you. Any comments? Seeing no comments, I'll just, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that we had raised this, or I had raised a question about Squamish Nation engagement and whether or not we could touch base on that, and so for me, that's I actually like some of the changes that I've seen in here, removing the helicopter pad and stuff, but that's a bit of a concern for me.
Thank you. Can I get clarification? Because I believe there was referral to the nations. I think Ms. Katerniak's answers might be. Maybe there was no communication back to us. I just wonder if staff can clarify on that.
Thank you through the chair. Yeah, we did refer this application to all the nations in the region. We did not receive a response, and then the applicant has not made a separate effort to reach out to the Squamish nations.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
Any other comments? No, I'll call the question. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Move adoption? Yeah, and move, okay, moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Demare. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 7.3, Tiger Bay Development Corporation OCP Amendment Applications Bylaw for Adoption. This is the South Britannia property. Okay. The consultant?
I'll move the first.
Yeah, we have questions first.
We have questions first, then?
Okay, so on the table right now is 7.3, and thank you, Mr. Vance, for being here to answer questions. I'll turn it over to Director Stoner. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, a number of questions on the document in front of us. The language refers to an applicable maintenance period under the servicing agreement in multiple different locations, but doesn't actually define what that period is. I'm wondering if staff can clarify what it is.
Through the chair, I can address that. There's an electoral area D subdivision and servicing bylaw for planned communities that lays out everything to do with the servicing and the applicable maintenance periods. And those maintenance periods are going to vary depending on what it is. It could be as short as a year, could be a number of years, but that's to be worked out as part of the detailed engineering and the servicing agreement using the applicable standards in the bylaw.
Okay, so that's a separate bylaw that we hold at the SLRD.
Correct, yes. Bylaw 741, 2002.
For clarifying. On the natural gas prohibitions, was the section 3.1G. It doesn't include cooking, which I believe was the intent of originally including this clause. It just says our original intent was no natural gas or fossil fuels, but the clause just says for heating and cooling of homes.
It's, yeah, thank you. Through the chair, yeah, it'll cover all. There'll be a restrictive covenant that will be registered on the lands. There'll be many restrictive covenants coming up over time, registered on the lands for a variety of purposes, but certainly one of them will be a restrictive covenant that doesn't allow the supply of any natural gas to the site, nor is any plans. So they'll get covered off as an RC, and it'll also get covered off in the servicing agreement to make sure it doesn't happen.
But that's not written as it is in the document in front of us that we're seeking adoption for. So I'm just trying to understand how we would move adoption of this document and then request something different of the developer later on in a servicing agreement. That feels unfair.
No, through the chair, the applicant has been clear all the way along that they have no intention of servicing the development of any natural gas.
Then why would we not include that in this document that we're being asked to adopt, or that we're being asked to approve as part of adoption today?
That would have been inadvertent that the words cooking were not included in there, but the intent has always been there'll be no natural gas supply to South Britannia. The board has been very clear on that, and the applicant has agreed to that.
Director Needham?
Yeah, through the chair, it says no gas covenant essentially, and there will be no piping of gas to the entire subdivision. So I can assure you there will be no cooking facilities provided for within them. And those will be banned as per the covenants.
So
should we
upon
amend
adoption, we can amend the language to include the word cooking.
Upon adoption, okay, so with the motion that would come at this meeting, we'd have to include an amendment.
That's fine.
And cut me off if you have other speakers. I have a list of questions.
No, that's fine.
Section 3.1H, water conservation does not speak to installing water meters. And I'm curious if this is something that we require new developments through other bylaws, or if this is an expectation.
Through the chair, I can speak to that. The bylaw 741 that Mr. Vance referred to, which is the Area D subdivision bylaw, it has parameters for water metering.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. And then there's a whole suite of sections that rely on third-party approvals. So this is section 3.2C, 3.2E, 3.5B, 3.7C, for various reasons, whether it's approval of Ministry of Transportation, Ministry of Environment, CN, or DFO. And the language in this agreement says that if the proponent is not successful in receiving approvals by these external parties, then the requirement just gets deferred to a later phase, or if it still isn't received at the end of the phasing, that they're just discharged of the obligation to provide those amenities, which seems odd to me. Can staff explain why those clauses were written as such?
Through the chair, it's actually fairly standard language because it is, as you point out, other parties, MOT, Ministry of Environment, CN. We can't force them to agree to anything, but I can say that all those parties, there's been a discussion over a number of years with. There's been environmental studies done. There's been obviously transportation work done. There's been plans shared with CN, but all those agencies have said, look, we're generally comfortable with where this is going, but in terms of formal approvals, formal review of the more detailed work, that cannot happen until after the bylaws are approved. So there's no reason to believe that any of these agencies will not follow through, but we can't, in a development agreement, guarantee that they will approve all these things.
I appreciate that, but we have approved or are about to adopt a development that is conditional to things like wetland waterworks and waterfront walkways as part of this development. And if the proponent is not able to secure the necessary agreements, and I don't think it's our responsibility to still enable them to be able to develop, if they're not able to secure those third-party applications or approvals, then the work just doesn't go forward. We don't discharge their obligations to do wetland works. I've personally never seen that. That seems unfair to our future communities.
Yeah, so like as Mr. Ben said, we have been working with these various parties for a long time. So for example, CN, they don't want to make any approvals to us until they see an SLRD bylaw in place. So they want this to be a real development that's got authorizations from the SLRD before they will engage in looking at various forms of crossing. They've never given us any indication that they were opposed to crossing. The same with Ministry of Environment on the wetland items. It's just, we don't really have anything to gain an approval on until we have an actual adopted bylaw.
Through the chair, I do appreciate that. I just am unclear why we would take the risk of discharging that requirement in this land development agreement. We still need to hold the developer responsible. And so we can still provide the approval in adoption, but why would we grant them the discharge if MOE decides that the plan that they put forward is actually not supportable? As this is not trying to better MOE or DFO or whoever else, but this is about delivering on what we said that we were going to get through this development.
In the event.
Yeah, that's really true. There are like no build provisions throughout the covenant so that deliverables have to be met before development obligations development can occur. And so if we were to come across say a roadblock on one of these items wherein we couldn't gain agreement from one of the ministries, we could always come back to the board, and that's what we would likely do, is to come back to the board to look at that particular issue, and the board can determine next steps.
I'm sorry, but through the chair, this doesn't say that you come back to the board. This says that you delay it to the next phase, and if at the end of the phasing it's not there, it gets discharged as a requirement. Like
Yeah.
this language is not in protection of this organization, this board, or the future community.
I'm trying to see where you're seeing that.
I'll pull up the exact page for you.
I don't disagree that it's concerning.
It's
I think it's helpful.
3.2E, for example.
Okay.
So page 298, 299. It says, the grantor agrees to make commercially reasonable efforts to obtain approvals from MOE at its own cost with respect to phase 1 wetland works. SLRD agrees and acknowledges that the approval of phase 1 wetland works is at the absolute discretion of MOE. If approved by MOE, the phase 1 wetland works will be designed. If not, the grantor will, it'll be SLRD under the terms of service agreement pursuant to this section 32.E. If not approved by MOE, the grantor will be relieved of its obligation to comply with this section.
Chinese 25.
Okay.
And that is repeated in multiple sections for
Yeah.
anything that has an external approval process.
Oh. Definition is wrong.
Yeah, I would say through the chair that this is not something unusual. This is something that happens regularly simply because we can't guarantee third-party approvals. So like I've said, CN is very difficult to deal with unless there is an actual land use approval in place. And then they will come to the table, but they have not given us any indication that they are against this.
I want to let you finish your thought, but I will also go to.
I have other questions, and I think I have a proposed amendment to address this if my colleagues would be willing to entertain it at a later date.
Yep,
Motion on the
let's
floor.
put that when we get to it.
My other question would be on Schedule G, which is the affordable housing framework. And to me, this seems really light on details and commitment. And I know that we previously talked about securing the details of affordable housing at a later stage, which is somewhat reflected here. But so I guess I have two questions with respect to Schedule G. So the first is, what is the so it refers to the SLRD bylaw approvals process in clause 1, which is when we would secure the non-market housing units. I just was unsure what SLRD bylaw approvals process we were referring to.
Through the chair, I can answer that. Thank you. These, both the 150 units of non-market affordable housing and these 20 units, these 20 cabins that are going to be temporarily for workforce housing, those are going to require housing agreements. And those housing agreements are a bylaw. And those bylaws will be brought forward to the board, and they'll lay out all those details, and the board will have to be satisfied. So if you look, for example, at the schedule that you just referenced, Schedule G, that was sort of a list of potential non-market affordable housing options. But as we've discussed over time with the board, who's going to come to the table to help fund it, what the need's going to be at that time, we don't know. This is several years out at a minimum. So this is just suggested ideas for what that non-market housing might look like. But again, it'll have to come to the board with all the details as a bylaw, and the board will have to be satisfied that it meets the board's expectations. I think further to that, and I'll let Director Needham expand upon this, I believe there's something in the OCP that talks to the criteria for affordable housing.
Yes, through the chair, we would rely when developing the housing agreement on the criteria set out in the area DOCP, as well as on the employee housing need and demand study as it's updated. This might not come back for 5 years, and we may have already done another update to that study. So we'll have more information that we can put towards that housing agreement.
Okay. And then finally, why would we include cooperative and micro apartment rental housing in a form of non-market housing, or even workforce rental housing for that matter? My understanding is that we were trying to secure affordable housing below market, not simply different forms of housing that are cheaper to provide and hence cheaper to rent, but actually subsidized housing. So why are there other forms of housing considered in the 150 non-market housing units?
But again, through the chair, these are just noted on the schedule as concepts. And in 5 years' time, perhaps these will be ideas that might be something that the board wants to consider. I know these are forms of housing often used for seniors and young people in various parts of Europe. This may not be deemed appropriate when the housing agreement comes, but this is really there more for just an idea of what this might include. But the 150 non-market units will really be, what form those take will be up to the board at a future date when these come before the board in a housing agreement bylaw.
Director Richmond, then Director Herbert, then Director Pangill.
I was just put my hand up to support the first point with regards to external referrals. I understand what Director Needham is saying, that they won't look at it without bylaws in place, but we can pass a bylaw without that language in there that then relieves them of the obligation. Still get to that point, so see it and consider the application, can we not?
I'm sorry, I'm not following.
So the clause or the line that Director Stoner caught my attention is the fact that if using the MOE as an example, if it doesn't come back satisfactory, it says in the language we would then exempt them from that requirement. We at the board can pass, pardon me, this bylaw without that line in there so that CN can, because I've heard from both staff here that CN and MOT, they won't consider the application until we've provided a bylaw. I get it, that makes sense. But we're stuck on that one line, on that exemption, so I guess my question is, can we not provide the bylaw or pass the bylaw with the removal or the change or the amendment to that language?
Through the chair, the bylaws, there's the OCP and zoning bylaw, those are one piece. This is the development agreement that this is situated in. And so we have the bylaw signed right now in registrable form. The developer would have to agree to removing that condition at this time. And I want to add one more thing, just because I was hoping to say this in my introduction, but that is I think it's important for the board to note this. We have development approval, information fees and notification bylaw, bylaw 1301 it's known as. This bylaw sets out all of our sort of ways of processing applications. In that bylaw, there is a clause 7.1 that states that if a bylaw is not adopted within 18 months after third reading, that bylaw is null and void. I wanted to let the board know that this month we are at the 18-month point. So today is a critical day in terms of considering approval of this bylaw. We can't waive anything in bylaw 1301. So I wanted to be clear on that.
Thanks.
Director Herford, questions?
I'm actually just pondering what we just heard, so I'm gonna go on the back of the list, please.
Director Pettingill, your questions?
Yeah, sorry, first, I'm not clear, what is our protection, or why is it not recommended that we remove the removal of these commitments? Like, I think if MOE or whoever didn't agree to something, wouldn't we want the opportunity to renegotiate? What ensures that with the current language, which relieves them of those conditions if they don't get MOE or whatever approval?
I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Vance, but I will say that the language in this development agreement has been vetted very thoroughly by our own legal counsel. But I'll turn it over to Mr. Vance to speak to your question.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if I can add much more than already added. I mean, this is my view. Certainly the development agreements I've been involved in fairly standard. And again, we cannot get another party, an external party, to agree to things that are in this development agreement. We're comfortable they're going to, but is there 100% guarantee on it? No. So I think, as Director Needham said earlier, if we came across something where it's like, an agency was not going to approve something, which would be very unlikely, then we would come back to the board, I guess, for resolution. But, a number of these things that are proposed are required by the applicant. And a good example would be, the Ministry of, or Mott needs to approve the trail going north between South Britannia and North Britannia by the side of the highway. Had discussions with them about it, but it's not just a trail, it's the sewer connection. So if Mott was not to, so the trail's sitting on top of where the sewer will be. So if Mott was not to approve the sewer, there wouldn't be a development. So it's all kind of coordinated. So, there's been a lot of discussions with Mott. There's no reason to believe they're not going to, but again, we can't in a development agreement guarantee 100% that another agency is going to agree to anything.
No, but we could pass
Chair,
this.
could I be on the list?
Yep, we could pass this by amending this language to remove this sort of extinguish clause where they're no longer required to fulfill the requirement. And then in the event that CN or MOT does not support the change, then they would come back to us. And it still allows us to approve the adoption within the time that we're required to, without hamstringing us to agreeing to these exit clauses that are problematic for us. Would everyone sort of?
I think that's where we're trying to go, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what we want to say.
So another topic then, if I
Oh,
understood.
sorry, I have Jack next, if it's a different topic.
Yes.
Director Crompton, go ahead.
Sorry, Chair, you articulated exactly what I was thinking. Thanks.
Okay. Director Panda, go ahead.
So am I to understand then with the housing piece, which it seems we've sort of pushed that off to a future decision, but does that mean the board of the day could say, well, we expect those 150 units to be 3-bedroom, below 30% of whatever the income and it's that or nothing? And, or is there some more, restrictions around our discretion there? It seems like that's maybe a lot for the developer to take on, or like, what are the constraints?
Through the chair, you know, a current board can't fetter the discretion of a future board. So a future board may come forward and have a different idea of what the housing agreement bylaw should look like and what it should entail based on what's going on. And the situation at hand and the latest information that we have on housing. So that will be up to a future board to determine.
But to be clear, that future board might, for example, say these all need to be 3-bedroom at below 30% of everyone's income.
Yeah, they might.
And just for clarity, the developer may not agree to this after we pass this, they may not agree to that, and that's a discussion for a future day. But the decision in front of us today is whether or not to support these bylaws and agreements in their current form or in an amended form as we choose. Now, it has been through legal discussion, and so we want to, and I think we all respect that. Director Herford, is that a legacy hand, or did you have a new question?
Just maybe a thought on this, securing the sort of the deliverables with the external approvals. I understand we can't hold, you know, we may want to release some of the obligation given that whatever we propose isn't, or whatever is contained here isn't supportable by those third parties. But if we valued that at a certain amount in consideration of the development, then I'd like to not lose. So one is the actual obligation to deliver the thing that's the letter of the agreement. The other piece to me is, say they were going to deliver something that was a $3 million project, but that's not viable. To me, it should come back to that delivery of that item can be discharged, but how do we capture that something else should be there as far as that renegotiation piece goes? Like, I think that the legal is likely on the first part, but misses the second part.
Back to the board.
Yeah, it's gonna come back to the board. So this. Yeah, sorry, that was confusing language for me. I couldn't really. I think the intention here is good. I think what we're seeing here is what we've largely supported for many years through this process. I think the amendments that have been suggested so far are fair. And really, I don't think it actually changes much as far as the requirements of us in this development hold until they can't be, and then they have to come back to the board rather than what's the word that I'm looking for? Discharge. Yeah, like a discharge chute. So I feel like maybe we take a 5-minute recess to redline this. Right?
On the workforce accommodation, the 20 units that we're requiring, there's a clause that if the proponents are not able to fill them with immediate workforce for the project, that they can then be used for tourist accommodation. I'm just curious why we would allow that as opposed to some other form of rental or workforce rental.
Through the chair, I can address that. So there's been a lot of discussion on that particular topic over the last number of years. And so the board in December of 2023, there was 3 resolutions passed. One was a CAC contribution. One was moving the community center from phase 4 to phase 3. And the third resolution talked to this, and it says that development agreement include a requirement that a minimum of 20 cabins be constructed at the outset of phase 1 of development that will initially be as needed for workforce housing. So a little bit of context on that. These cabins are only going to be there for a short period of time as part of the initial phase of development. They literally could be there for only 2-3 years, possibly. They will require a housing agreement, which the board will get to see, which will include the details. So in talking to the applicant, the issue is, well, what if those cabins are there and there simply is no need or no demand, genuinely no demand for workforce housing there on a short-term basis? What would an alternative use be? And I seem to recall the board being fairly clear that with respect to these cabins, they did not want them used for long-term accommodation. The idea of these cabins is not that suddenly they're rented out for a year or two to people. It was meant to be short-term accommodation. So with that in mind, in talking to the applicant, it was like, well, if they aren't being used for workforce housing, what would be a short-term alternative? And the short-term alternative was tourist accommodation, which, you know, could take advantage of the surf park right there. Ironically, these in the long term will be tourist accommodation, because the applicant's intent is to at some point take those cabins and move into the south part of the development, which is, the board knows, is where the tourist accommodation component is supposed to be anyway. So that was the thinking behind that. But if there's some discomfort by the board, again, this will require a development agreement that grinds out all these details. So if the board gets that and goes, we're really not comfortable with the way this is worded, that's fine. So that was the thought behind it.
I appreciate that context. Thank you.
Okay, so I think, unless there's any other questions, I think we can get to a motion. And I think the first amendment that I heard was 3.1.g to add the word cooking. So it's heating homes. I've lost the spot, but there were 3 criteria and we're adding the word cooking. So no natural
Is that
gas.
the simplest way? It's
Yeah.
not more simple, just to say no natural gas period, no gas period.
I think just for the, we know that there's no pipe coming into the site.
Well, propane tanks.
Yeah, like we don't want a propane tank dropped on the site to do ovens either. Is that where we're at? I mean,
About cooking in any other form.
yeah. Yeah, we could say no natural gas.
Well, natural gas is out of the question. There is none through that area.
No fossil gases.
Just to add the word cooking.
Okay. Would you like to make the amendment, Jenna?
Sure, I'll make that amendment.
Okay, and seconded by Director Richmond. Comment? Thank you, Megan.
Yeah, I think this is just adding it in for clarity. I think that was the intent, and other reasons for using fossil fuels are enumerated. And so I think for clarity, it's important to include.
Thank you.
Make sure there's plugins outside in the decks for electric barbecues.
That's a future conversation. So with that, I will call the question. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Sorry,
On the amendment.
on the amendment. Just that amendment, just the 3.1.g. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Now, do you want to recess, Angela, to go through the many sections of change to that exit clause? Or do you want us to list them? What's easiest for you?
Can I seek a point of clarity
Yeah.
from my board colleagues?
Yeah.
So I have them listed here and I'm happy to read them out, but it's across a few different sections. And in each of them, it's not just, so there's the discharge is the last piece of the clause. The start of it is if it's not provided in the phase as expected, that it keeps getting pushed down to phases until such time it gets discharged with no check back in with the board as written. And so I am curious if we want to just remove the last part of the clause around discharging and enable them to continue to push delivery of key amenities out if they're not getting responses from folks at DFO who we know are really hard to work with, but are really delivering key parts of this overall application. or if we want to amend that entire section, that if on the schedule as presented, it has to come back for reconsideration of the development agreement if the proponents are having a hard time getting the approvals necessary. That's the way we handle it in Squamish. I'm not saying it's the right way to do it. But that has been my previous experience with large scale developments, that we know these things take time. We know it's hard to work with other orders of government. It's hard to work with local governments too sometimes. If the phase development is not progressing as expected, then they're expected to come back to the board in a public forum to discuss how they're going to rearrange the delivery of the things that we have spent 4 years negotiating. It feels a little bit unfair to me to push that out to this agreement that would just allow it to potentially all backfall to the 4th phase. I appreciate that that's not actually what would happen. Some of these things need to happen for the development to move forward, but I do think that there's a risk here that we don't see some of the core benefits that we've spent so long trying to secure.
And we've negotiated them in a phased approach for a particular reason. But
So answer that.
Chair,
It would seem to me that the amendment would be to remove all the last bits and say, in the event that a third-party external referral group comes back in a negative form, that it just comes back to the board. And that way it stays general. We don't have to try to come up with every scenario in advance of.
yeah,
And it's just, it comes back to the board. Does that make sense, staff perspective? That's how I would amend it.
so what language helps us make these amendments? For your process?
Yeah, and I think I'll refer to Director Needham as well as to what's going to be helpful for staff from a resolution perspective. I do have the First Amendment, no problem. But perhaps it's simply an addition that all third-party referrals, which are not approved, come back to the board.
Yeah. Does that satisfy Jenna and Director Needham?
Thank you, Chair. I would suggest that we would need to remove the last sentence from 3.2E and 3.2E and replace it with that standard clause that if not approved by MOE, the grantor agrees to the grantor and the grantee will come back before the SLRD board. Something to that effect.
So there's 5 sections where it says, if not approved by insert third party here, the grant will be relieved of its obligations to comply. Are you suggesting we remove that sentence, or are you suggesting we alter it to say if not approved, this would be go back to the board for further consideration? There's 5 spots where that's it, the relieved of its obligations there.
Okay.
I can read them out. Maybe if Director Stoner, if you agree with this, 3.2C, 3.2E, 3.5B, 3.7C and D.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you. Okay, so motion on the floor is to amend based on the language that was just presented. Pull back the tape. You want to make that?
I'll move that.
And seconded by Director Pettengill. Further comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now, main motion as amended.
I'd like to move that.
Another amendment.
Okay, go ahead.
In Schedule G, I would like to suggest that we remove the suggestion of, and I don't have it in front of me right now, what is it? Cooperative and micro apartment rental housing. And if that's seconded, I'll speak to it.
Thank you. Thanks. Go ahead.
Through the chair, I've heard from staff that this is intended to be a list of potential moving forward that future boards could consider. I also don't want to give future boards, the community, or the proponent a false expectation that market rental cooperative or micro apartments are what we are trying to achieve here through the affordable housing clause. What we are trying to achieve is non-market housing. And I don't think that that gets delivered by the proponent choosing to build lower cost housing that will then be rented for lower prices because it just costs them less to build. What we're looking for are things like CMHC helped financed projects or funded through the benefit of redevelopment of this land, and hence paid for by the developer to reduce the cost of development, not just produce smaller apartment rentals. And so I don't think that this is a viable form of what I would typically consider affordable housing.
Any other comments? So calling the question on the amendment. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Any other amendments? You good, Jenna?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
so on the, do you want to handle each one of these separately?
The first two separate,
Yeah.
and the last two can go together.
Okay,
So
so
1739-2021, I would like to move that be adopted, please.
moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Mack. Pardon?
As
As amended, yeah.
amended.
All in favor? Oh, pardon me.
Yeah, I will not be supporting this. And I think it is actually much better and I appreciate the amendments. But I'm still stuck on some of the prior comments I had before. I don't believe I supported this earlier. For me, what I heard from the community of Britannia was still concern about some of the amenities and I know there's still some discussion about amenity funds. I know Squamish is worried that there aren't sufficient amenities to prevent demand on Squamish services and Britannia doesn't want to see any offsetting going to Squamish, wants to see that money or any funds or CAC spent there. So to me, there's a gap in the amenities we are seeing from this. And so I think we either need to see those built in Britannia as part of this, or we need to come to a better agreement on how to make sure the knock-on impacts to other communities are dealt with. I also think for me, and I understand this is just one development, but as a whole, it's a lot of housing and not matching employment that would be able to afford that housing. So I think we are necessarily designing a car-dependent community at a time when that's exactly what we're trying not to do. And so for me, I would have need to see more employment space in the plans or a broader plan that includes employment space that matches the housing. So we aren't sort of forcing people to commute to the city or do something like that for employment for these homes. Thank you.
Any other comments? All the question, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Director Pettengill is opposed. Motion carries. Pardon me.
This one could come if we get through everything, the next one.
1740.
Oh, sorry,
We're still in, Yeah.
Sorry.
it's okay. So that bylaw 1740-2021 be adopted as amended.
Yeah, move that.
Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Mayer. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Director Pettengill opposed. Motion carries. And then the second or the third and fourth are that the South Britannia Development Agreement be endorsed for execution as was amended. And that the board chair and director of legislative services be authorized to execute the necessary legal documents required in support of this application.
I'll move those.
Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Mack. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And 7.4. Director Pettengill is opposed. Thank you. Thank you. Good. So 7.4, we will defer to.
Maybe at the end.
Maybe at the end, yeah. Okay.
What for the third?
We're gonna just either get to it at the end if we have a citizen.
Sorry, you want to defer it?
Sorry,
I'm
the 7.4,
Yeah.
I was actually gonna ask for a deferral and I can
Okay.
explain that if you like. Want to do that now? Just, well, okay, thank you. I'm delighted to see the OCP for Area B moving along and I, did considerable work on this in August and September, and I'm glad to see that many of my edits and some of my suggestions to staff were incorporated into this new version. This is great. When I go through it, I see there's some errors in the credits, for example, on the photos. And I don't know how staff would know this. One of the areas is called Tom Cole and they've credited it as if Tom Cole was a person, which is perfectly reasonable. And I think there's some other small errors like that around photo credits, but I'd like to get that right. Yes?
Oh,
We're just gonna defer this to the next.
okay, I was just gonna say that can all be changed before third reading.
Great.
The population numbers, though, it's Seton, for example, is listed as a population off reserve of 300 people.
Stick with
We're
it.
either deferring this or we're.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
So-
we're not debating it now.
I'll second it.
So we're gonna defer this to June and we'll bring it back in June.
okay.
Okay. Good. Okay. Gina, motion for that, second. Yep.
Yeah, I second it.
Great. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 8.1, CAO verbal update.
Hi, everyone. Heather Paul, SLRD, CAO. Good to see you all here today. Only a quick update, just noting that Chair Ford, myself, and Director Rainbow attended the Britannia Beach Community Association a meeting that was scheduled for us to attend. And that they are discussing the amenity of the community center and their concerns around funding it and these tax implications with the new service. They have directed questions to staff, which staff are looking at responding to and are collecting the responses, including not accepting the amenity and keeping it within the developer's control. And this is because how it is built now impacts sound regulations and the most of the revenue that would come from this operating this community center is in weddings and those late night events, and nothing can happen after 10 p.m. So they see that the tax implications might be high because the revenue there to offset those wouldn't be there. Also concerned is a small volunteer group, how they would manage it, but they're looking at creative things there. They also requested what it would take to opt out of the Squamish pool tax to see if that would offset the cost for the community center and some other general things. So staff are looking at that and will respond with answers and options. It's really just about what their options are around that. And that was on May 14th.
I could add something to that. Maybe, look at, since that meeting, the Rob McDonald, who is the developer there, is seriously looking at the option of him retaining control of it and running it in the way that they used to, where he owned the building and he just allowed the community to use it, basically. The financial stuff would have to be worked out. I talked to, I'm wondering about the language of our bylaw, which says that the BBCA will be offered a 99-year lease.
Can we take that offline and bring it in?
Yeah, but I just wanted to say that it's ongoing, it's not static, and there's stuff going on in the community as well about how they want to move forward.
And take us too far down the line of
No, that's fine.
a direction that we're not ready for.
To flag something in that thing we just passed, phase 3 includes the building of the community hall, and we need to be thinking now about what does that mean? Who's going to own it? Who's going to operate it? What kind of tax center do we need, and so on? We don't want to wait until it's built and get into this sort of conundrum again.
Thank you. Motion to receive the verbal report. Moved by Director Stoner, second by Director Rich Jones, all in favor, any opposed, motion carries. 8.2, the Squamish Food Policy Council is requesting that Area D Director be appointed as a board liaison. Moved by Director Rich Jones, second by Director Mack, all in favor, any opposed, motion carries. Direction request from the ALC subdivision application in Area C. What do we have here? Good afternoon, Ms. Katerniak.
Hi, directors. Thank you, Chair. So this ALC non-farm use application report, it seeks permission to proceed to have this application reviewed by the Agricultural Advisory Committee in Area C, or another direction as per board discretion. So overall, the application is seeking to subdivide land into 2 parcels, and it would be compliant with the current zoning bylaw. However, it is important to note that the RGS and the OCP and the Pemberton Valley Agricultural Plan generally seek to limit the amount of land used for non-agricultural uses. And if this subdivision were to ultimately be approved, the amount of land used for residential and accessory residential purposes would double. So that's a quick summary. Let me know if I can clarify anything. Thank you.
Director Richmond.
So in the past, when we've had these requests, we've kind of handled them in different ways. Sometimes we've said approve, we approve in principle and then forward it on. Sometimes we don't approve and forward it on. Other times we've waited for approval to hear the comments from the ALC because they can help inform our decision. I'm kind of leaning towards that one on this because I feel like as staff pointed out, you know, this does double the residential non-farming footprint. However, we also know that the cost of farming these days has gone up, and sometimes land is more farmable in smaller parcels rather than the big parcels. So not being an expert, I'm kind of curious to hear the ALC's opinion on that. Perhaps before we either give approval or non-approval. So that's my thought. It's kind of a question for the board to see, you know, like, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
The clarifying question, do you mean the AAC or the ALC?
Well, both really, but I was thinking the ALC when I said.
I have Chris, then Lori, then Russell, then Jenna.
Yeah, just as I read this seems to be somewhat contrary to some of our policy. I didn't see anything in here that explained why this would be a benefit or something we want to consider, or is that we haven't received that. It's just a request to split and it's up to us to sort of see if there's a benefit here.
Follow that up because it's kind of in line.
Yeah.
So my thought process is again, maybe this might enhance farming in the sense that it's more viable to farm the smaller lots than the big lots. That's just my thought process as a non-farmer. So I'm wondering that's what I was kind of wanting to have that validated or fleshed out through the AC and the ALC. So yeah, I don't know if that's sort of.
Yeah. I think we refer these things to the committee because we have convened a group of local experts and.
Yeah, and sometimes it's pretty obvious, like Director Pettingill says, it's in direct contravention to our policies, this, that, or the other, and it's easy enough to decide. For me personally, it's not that easy in this case, so I'd be interested to hear the experts.
All right.
Thank you. I do support this, and even knowing that the subdivision will increase the land use for non-farm purposes, if we do decide to subdivide and move through with this subdivision, because of a house and a driveway, so that will take a little bit of that away. I still support that. My question is, it says the soil is classified as 70% class 2W, which is considered to have moderate limitations due to excess water, and then 30% which is severe limitations due to excess water. So I'm just wondering, because I know that there is a creek going through there. Is a creek just on one side of the property? Because at first I thought the property was gonna go down the middle, but it's not. It's actually back and forward, which would have that driveway going down, house back there, but I'm not sure. Does the soil classified the 70-30, is that based on the subdivision there? Or the creek, where the creek bed lies?
Through the chair, thank you, through the chair. The land is not, so the 70% and 30%, it's not split at the creek. It's just sort of randomly placed on this parcel.
Does the creek would it run on either property? Like, which property would it run on? Cause I'm looking at it on the picture on page 507, and I don't see it at all. Or is that it right there? No, that's not it. So the creek is that the creek right there on the 5-7 point, or the first part of the property? Yes, oh, okay, okay. So I was just wondering if that was the 70-30. Okay. I think it's answered.
Director.
Yeah, so, excuse me. I do support this application, but I do believe it should go to the ALC. For their expertise on this. And whatever they come back with, that's what we should base our decision on. I would like to see us, it says options as per the LC. I would support number 2.
Where's that?
Go ahead.
It's on page 3, so it's right at the end of this presentation.
Do you mean AAC? Can I just double check that?
What's that?
Do you mean the area C, AAC?
No.
No,
The Agricultural Advisory Committee?
Support, so.
Okay, so you're supporting approving the application and forwarding it to the ALC.
The
for a final
Agricultural
decision.
Land Commission.
Not the committee,
For a final decision.
to the commission.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, I was leaning towards referring it to the AAC, and I'm just curious if there's a reason why you wouldn't want to hear from the community.
Just time, it's because the AAC only meets when necessary. And so that may take a month. And then there's gonna be at least another month for it to come back here. So I think it's gotta go to the ALC in the end anyways. So why not send it to them first and get their yay or nay and carry on from there.
So
Then it'll end up going.
move then? Or-
No, I don't have a secretary. Sorry,
I'll make a motion when you're.
go ahead.
Yeah, well, that was my intent to make a motion. It's probably the same one, so.
Well,
Sorry, can we just repeat the motion?
yeah,
Yeah,
nothing's on the floor yet, so
Can I-
I'll go to Chris.
I would test that we referred the application to the electoral area C Agricultural Advisory Committee for input prior to further consideration. Option 1.
And not the ALC, just the AAC?
And then it comes back to us as the normal practice, right? Like the whole point of having the Agricultural Advisory Committee is to help us make these decisions. So this then comes back to us, and as needed, they will meet to discuss this application. And then they'll make their referrals back to us as a board, and then we either refer it on to the ALC for support or we don't, based on the feedback that we get.
Yeah, and just from my perspective, what I see before me is contrary to our policy, so I don't have an understanding of why I would support this. I'm willing to listen to the AAC, maybe they have information I don't understand, and then based on that, I would decide whether or not I'd want to go to the ALC. I'm not ready for this to go to the ALC. I'm not ready to support it because, again, as what we have before us is contrary to our policy.
Okay,
I'm just curious, this eventually has to go to the ALC,
Yeah.
correct?
yeah,
No matter what?
nope, we can not refer it. So if it was something that we said or our staff said, this is absolutely not within the policies and the fit of the community. We have not referred things in the past. So that's a choice of the board, but that's why we have the committee to help advise on matters of agriculture. I have Jenna then Mike.
I'm fine.
Okay.
Well, we can forward it on to the ALC for their comment. Being neutral. Without support or not, we can, we've done that before.
Okay.
We've absolutely done that before.
Yeah.
If, you know, again, just as is in the same vein as going to the AAC, just to get their opinion on it, and it kind of keeps things moving along. When we forward an application on to the ALC with our support, it strengthens it.
Yeah.
Right? It strengthens the file for the ALC. They go, oh, the community really wants this. It might affect their decision making. But in this case, me being neutral on it personally, I'm happy to just get their input on it. They come back, AAC comes back, we have all that information in hand, we make a decision.
So you proposing an amendment that we forward to both the AAC and the ALC?
With no comment, with no comment of support or non-support from the board. And see what we get back. And then it's up to us.
Can I just seek clarity from staff on the functionality of referring it to the AAC in tandem to the ALC for decision? Is that?
For decisions, for input, we will get comments back from AAC and ALC. That will inform the final conversation here.
Because this is our decision.
Because it's our final decision to make anyway, so that way we have it all in hand.
Okay. Director Burge Jones, and then I'll.
Director Needham.
I think probably Director Needham knows more about this.
Yeah, so the AAC is our advisory committee. Its mandate is to refer all matters related to agriculture, whether it be a variance or this sort of thing, any kind of exclusion. Once we send an application to the ALC, it doesn't come back to us.
Right.
It simply goes to the ALC for a decision. And then many months later, generally, we hear back from the ALC about their decision. But sending to both the advisory committee and the ALC at the same time really wouldn't, it wouldn't serve much of a purpose, because that AAC input would then not be forwarded to the ALC. They'd already be midway through their review by the time we got the AAC's input to them.
And it would be sort of the equivalent of not supporting it, because we wouldn't give any, we would just be sending it like to neutral is the same as saying no, or we don't know, but it's not supportive, right? So if we want to keep our options open, if in the event we do want to support it, then we shouldn't send it to the ALC until we've heard from the AAC locally and made our own decision, if I understand the process.
This application meets the criteria of the ALC based on the size of the lots or the acreage involved.
Yeah, I guess what that is really a zoning matter. So we have a number of different policies, the agricultural plan for Area C being one, which does not really support subdivision of agricultural land. We also have the Area C OCP, which is another policy document, which again does not support subdivision of agricultural land. But we have zoning in this particular area that this piece of land meets the minimum parcel size. So even though policies don't really support subdivision, the zoning would enable the subdivision. So there's a bit of conflict, I guess, between those documents. And it would be.
But what they're trying to do is legally doable.
Yeah, it's all legally doable. It would have to be approved by the ALC.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, yeah,
Yeah.
I understand that.
Director Herford.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure if you could orient me where we are right now. There wasn't an amendment to that, so we're talking about just the AAC. Okay, so I'm speaking in support of this direction. I think when we have matters that come to us that are so nuanced, that we create an advisory body, that we are would be well served to seek their advice in such matters. So I look forward to this coming back with that piece of context.
Okay. It's already been seconded. Okay. All in favor? Motion carries. Sorry, I should have asked. Is anyone opposed? Okay. Motion carried. Thank you. All right, 8.4. This is a request for decision from Lillooet Nation, request for the SLRD to submit non-farm use and or ALR exclusion applications to the ALC.
Thank you. I can really speak to this briefly. This has been pulled together very quickly on the basis of a request from the Lillooet. They haven't really stated whether they want to apply for non-farm use or an exclusion. So this is sort of written to cover all eventualities. The normal process, as was just talked about, was that this would go to the AAC first, the Agricultural Committee, and then to the ALC. If the Lillooet want to do a land exclusion, we would also have to, this would have to be advertised. There would have to be notifications sent, and there would have to be a public hearing held. So depending on which way the Lillooet wants to proceed, this resolution is set up to sort of address all of those eventualities. But the board can choose to expedite this if they wish by bypassing the Electoral Area C Advisory Committee. And so the options are all set out at the end of this report. The preferred option being suggested by staff is that that we are directed to open up a application on behalf of the Lillooet through the portal. We refer this to the AAC, the Advisory Committee. I noted here that the board could forgo this referral in order to expedite this. In the case of an exclusion application, that we might be directed to schedule a public hearing. That Director Mack be delegated as chair and Director Ford as alternate, with any other SLRD director as delegated, also delegated as an alternate should neither designated chair be available. And then the other options follow, which is do not support the Lillooet's request for us to apply to the ALC on their behalf. And other.
Any questions?
Chair?
Go ahead, Director Hopful, and then I'll go to Director Crompton.
Thank you. Through the chair, is this something that we would normally do? Why wouldn't Lillooet do this and take this on with them?
Yeah, this is a bit of a remnant of past ways. And so the Local Government Act did not allow First Nations to actually own and apply for fee simple land. So these lands are held in fee simple. The act has not been changed. So we, because the Lillooet are not a treaty nation, basically the act requires that local governments apply on their behalf. So we would be taking this initiative on to assist the Lillooet in their desire to do a health and wellness center on their property. Should have gotten into that piece, sorry.
Right.
The actual land use that they're looking for.
I think the issue I have with it is that it goes against everything that we're working on with Truth and Reconciliation and them being their own governance over their own land. So somewhere in there, I would, if we do that, then this initiative, then fine. But I also think that we should be advocating for the government or to allow them to do their own advocation for what they want on their land.
That
So,
is the work of DRPA, is to change these antiquated legislations.
right, I just feel like it's kind of,
They can't apply though.
I know.
Have to.
I know,
If they want it.
it's like I said, I'm okay to apply because they can't apply, but I think that somehow we should advocate so that you know, we support their initiative to try to do that.
Director Crompton and then Director Herford.
Thanks for the report. Does the staff recommendation seek to provide the sort of highest level of expediting we were able to come up with?
Through the chair, the staff recommendation recommends that we follow our typical process, which is to refer this to the Agricultural Advisory Committee. There is a note in the options, though, that if the board wishes to expedite this application, they may forego that referral to the Electoral Area C AAC.
It's just in the
Subject to other people's questions, I would like to move the alternative.
Okay, Director Herford.
I'll second that actually.
Didn't we already have? No, we hadn't. I do want to get through questions, and I think Director Rainbow had a question.
Yeah, this is agricultural land. I know they hold it in fee simple, so they have to go through this process. Is there no land, reserve land that they could use for this particular option? Just and not try to take the agricultural land?
I'm not certain.
Any way of asking that question?
All right, now.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think that question would be not well received by the Lillooet Nation. Their reserve land is controlled through the Indian Act, and they have been given the freedom in the last year to purchase land that they never had the freedom to do and have these options in front of them. The land that most reserve land is not, is heavily controlled and not a lot of it for what they're trying to do. They are not being viewed as natural people to make this application. And this is why they're coming to us for support.
I get that.
Okay.
I just don't like to see agricultural land being used to be, it doesn't have to be. That's
So, go ahead.
The thing is, Tony, all their land is the best agricultural land in this valley. So all of it.
Okay.
It's just that it's not designated that because it's controlled by INEC. But anyways, I think we should go with option one, and we should follow everything as we just laid out, because we just had an application for somebody to subdivide their property, and we wanted to follow the rules as they're laid out to go to the AAC. So I think we should follow the same rules and follow the same process, and we will get through this.
Would you like to make that motion?
Yes, I do.
We already had
We don't have a motion on the floor.
for the alternate, I thought.
I seconded the motion.
I didn't acknowledge the motion because we were still in questions.
Sorry.
I will accept that the motion was originally made by Director Crompton and seconded by Director Herford, and if you would like to make an amendment, I don't think there's any amendment to be made. Was there an amendment? Did you have it that we were gonna bypass the Crompton?
Correct. Yes, I moved the alternate, which was the suggestion that if we wanted to expedite, we could remove the referral.
And that was what I seconded.
Sure. Okay. I'm getting inputs from many people right now, and it's late in the day, but.
From my understanding from this, I don't know if it meant remove the referral. It could happen in tandem. I just want clarification from staff that, yeah, would it be bypassing entirely, or would you be putting the application in and it could still go in front of the AAC for comment?
Sorry, just to clarify, my motion, which I believe has been seconded, is that it not go to the AAC.
Okay, so that's the motion on the floor. Everyone clear? anyone need to speak to it?
The negative motion, but
No. The motion is,
I'd
and
like-
I read that, that we give support to Lillooet Nation's request for the SLRD to apply to the ALC under parts 25 and 29. And to submit the necessary information via the portal. To direct staff to refer the application to the Area C Area Advisory Committee, or should the board wish, is to forego this referral. And so the motion as made is to forego the referral. Then to direct staff to schedule a public hearing. If an exclusion application is to be pursued, delegate Area C Director Mack to chair the public hearing with myself as the alternate, or any other director as delegated as an alternate should neither of us be available for the public hearing. Everyone clear? That is the motion on the floor. It's been seconded by Director Herford. If anyone has a comment, please make it now.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment.
I'll come back to you. Go ahead, Director Pettingill.
I wanted to speak in favor. For me, the prior resolution, we had a request for something that was against our policy and no clear indication of what the benefit might be or why we might consider that. And that's why I wanted to go to the AAC. Here, there's also something that generally is contrary to some of our agricultural policy, but we have a clear sort of offsetting factor in from my perspective, which is our truth and reconciliation work. And for me, in that context, the trade-off is clear and worthwhile. So that's why I would support this.
Director Crompton.
I support the motion. I think that the Lillooet Nation government is making the application. I think that they are a government of standing.
Thank you. Director Herbert.
Yeah, thank you. Speaking in support of the motion, I think, as Director Compton just said, this is a government, a nation that is looking to make a change on their land, and I think that that it's important to recognize the difference, the very distinct and dramatic difference from previous applications that we've seen from private citizens on ALR land. So I'm happy to support this piece as in the strongest way that I can at this step in the process. So thank you.
Okay. Unless it's, make it new.
I will not be supporting this, as reconciliation is a two-part piece to it. We both need to work together, and one of our protocols is that it goes to the AC, just like we talked about in the previous agenda item that we had.
Thank you through the chair. I will be supporting the motion on the floor. I do think at times we have competing policies and priorities. Truth and reconciliation has always been a top priority for this board since I've sat on it. And one of those pieces is trying to reflect not where we can just do better advocacy, which I think would be necessary going forward after going through this experience, but also recognizing where we have power and control to improve processes, to empower First Nations to be able to make decisions, to act as independent governments for their lands and their unceded territories. And I think that this is part of it. It's a small piece of really doing some internal work of recognizing where we can try and change our practices a little bit to make things easier, especially for a proposal that is trying to get health and wellness on and close to the population a little while. Dr. Hopple.
I'm just really conflicted on this one, but I do believe that the province should be proactively identifying and designating equivalent areas of available land to the ALR to maintain overall agriculture capacity and long-term food security. I think that's important to us. I think that if we set the precedents for the one prior to this, I think we should be following suit. I will not be supporting this only because I think it should go to the commission first, or to the AAs.
Yeah, and I fully support what they're doing, but I don't support this motion because on one hand, we just turned down a motion and now we're gonna pass a motion that's not following our policies. So anyways,
Okay, let's
I'll
call
be
the question.
voting.
Yeah, let's call the question and read the room.
Yeah,
All in favor? Is there anyone
Aye.
opposed? Do I have 3 opposed, 4 opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Vic. I am going to call a recess, please. We're on 8.5 regarding a direction request for the Northern Statland Relations Community to Community Forum update, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Naden.
Thanks, everyone. Jeanette Naden, Indigenous Relations Advisor with the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District, presenting a report to update the Board of Directors regarding the Community to Community Forum that's scheduled to take place this Friday in Lillooet, and to provide an opportunity for the board to review and provide feedback on the terms of reference for a leadership committee that would be formed between Northern Statland communities, the District of Lillooet, and the SLRD. So the agenda for the meeting on Friday is attached, as is the draft terms of reference for the Intergovernmental Leadership Committee. And I could just quickly run through, I mean, the purpose of the forum really is to build on the momentum generated at the September 2024 gatherings, where we received feedback from leadership at that time to move forward to establish a process to enable the leadership committee to be formed. So staff worked together to draft this terms of reference. And the purpose of the meeting on Friday will be to provide an opportunity for the delegates to review the terms of reference, confirm priority key focus areas, and identify next steps. So I think with that, I will just turn it over to the board for questions. And thank you.
Thank you for that. I like terms of references. I'm just curious, we've got Intergovernmental Leadership Committee and the Political Leadership Committee. Sounds like we've got 2 separate committees, or is it one committee?
Sorry, the terms of reference is for the leadership committee, and the idea is that the leadership committee would, we've identified a mandate in that terms of reference, and then the leadership committee would delegate to a staff working group. So there's a leadership committee that this is the purpose
Is
of.
that the political?
Yes.
Leadership committee?
Yes, correct.
So that's elected officials?
Correct.
Okay.
Got some questions here. So with regards to the purpose, we've got number 3, the Statland title and jurisdiction by pursuing collaborative decision-making on matters affecting the land and resources in the territory. Correct. So if I look under it, because I use this book a lot, and I look at Indigenous peoples have the right to own, use, develop, and control the lands, territories, and resources that they possess by reason of traditional ownership. So everything is traditional ownership, correct? I mean, is that not what we say, right? And they have the right to the land, the territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used or acquired. So when I look at this, I want to go into the C2C. These C2Cs are very important to me, and our relationships are very important. So I don't want to go in saying that I'm going to do something that I can't do. So I'm just wondering, when I look at our purpose and implement reconciliation through concrete actions, what are those actions? What are we looking for? I just need a little bit of clarification, because if I look at this and I compare it to that, then this needs to change. How this board sits, how we work together needs to change. So I'm wondering, is that here? Is this Friday?
So through the chair, yeah, I think the purpose of Friday is to actually have exactly that discussion. But, you know, if with the key focus areas, one of the areas under relationship building is develop and implement plans to enact, UNDRIP, and address relevant TRC calls to action. And that's one of the things that we had talked about with the Indigenous Relations Truth and Reconciliation framework that we're currently developing for the SLRD. Our hope in terms of the next step for that would be to work with the nations to actually co-create exactly that. So I think this terms of reference is intended to enable that type of work to take place and to have those discussions.
Okay. And that goes under this Article 26 as well. Is that correct? Like,
Well, so Article 26 is part of UNDRIP, and we're looking at ways to enact UNDRIP at the local government level.
all of it, or parts of it? Or the beginning of it, or the conversation of it?
Yeah.
It's kind of the clarification I need, because when I look at it, then that changes everything.
I mean, I think the reality is it will change everything.
Yeah.
And that's the purpose of the framework, is for us to prepare for that and figure out how our processes need to change in order to actually embody UNDRIP at the local level. Not all of it is going to be within our purview, but there are things that we can do at the local government level to respect Statland title, and enable them to pursue self-determination. So yeah, that's, I mean, it's a conversation that it's already started. And I mean, Friday's the purpose is to have that continuing conversation. Yeah, and then with this leadership committee terms of reference again, I think we all recognize nobody has the answers of how this is going to play out, but one of the purposes of this leadership committee is to provide a forum for elected officials from the District of Lillooet, the regional district, the Northern Statland communities to come together and explore exactly this.
Are we gonna include like public input as well?
Yeah, so one of the things that we have under here in terms of cultural preservation, public education initiatives. And that's something that is quite important to me as well. And it's something that we'll be looking at as a regional district when we do actually roll out the communications plan with regards to the framework as well. Certainly there has to be a robust community engagement aspect of that. But yeah, education initiatives is something that this leadership committee wants to pursue as well. That was a priority identified not just by the District of Lillooet and the SLRD, but also by the Northern Statland.
Thank you through the chair. Thanks for this work, and my apologies that I won't be able to make it on Friday. I think this is a good starting point for the conversation and ongoing relationship building, and helps to start build out the framework for our journey forward. One of the questions that I had is always kind of ground truthing our joint capacity, and then where we might be able to flex to support capacity on the other side of relationship building. There are some really lofty goals in here, I think, which are positive, but especially around the reporting and accountability component. So some of the measurements for the annual reporting feel important, but also could be quite onerous. And so I think that's one area that I just would offer to bring forward in discussion on Friday, is really ground truthing, making sure that we don't lose momentum because we set our sights too high, but not wanting to dismiss the importance of doing annual reporting. So where can we actually find that balance of making sure that we're going to get something out, but don't set the goal too lofty that it feels like it's unachievable. But aside from that, I think that this is a really great starting point for a lot of the work that is to come.
Okay, so the motion is to, I guess we create direction to send us to Friday to have these discussions and to report back after the C2C.
Yes, so there will be a report getting created after the meeting that will sort of summarize everything that was discussed at the meeting. And then I'm anticipating that there will be further revisions needed to this terms of reference, and then that will be going not just to the SLRD, but to all of the participating partners for review. And just to point out, and that's something that we made sure to include in here with this, with the terms of reference. This leadership committee is not a decision-making body at this time because we all still have our own decision-making processes that have to happen. So the purpose of this committee would be to make recommendations through, can't remember where I had that in here, just give me 1 second. Identify issues and opportunities requiring joint action, obtain approvals from respective councils and boards as needed, and delegate goals to the working group. And that would be the staff level working group. So yeah, speak with that.
Thank you. I think having been on the intergovernmental working group before with you, and I'm reading through this and I'm thinking, this is fantastic. I mean, we're certainly putting our cards on the table. I think it's really good work. It's laid out well. I also think it's quite a lot for people to take in. There's a couple of new chiefs that are going to be there. That it may take a while, I think, to work through this, but I am so happy that we have, I think we will make some changes here, but I'm really happy that we have this to work from. And I appreciate that you did a lot of work to get this here.
Thank you. Just to clarify, so the first draft of this terms of reference was drafted by Jim MacArthur, the intergovernmental advisor at the Lillooet Tribal Council. And then it was brought to the coordinating committee for the forum. And so we did have an opportunity as staff to provide feedback on the draft, but it was Jim's work.
Excellent.
Okay, I think then the motion is to receive and come back.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Rich Jones. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Chair, I just want to say that I tried to keep it open, but I have a doctor's appointment that's come up in the last few days, and I apologize, I won't be able to make it.
That's okay.
We are
Got the north.
members.
We've got the north there. That would be nice next time.
That's needed either.
Okay, 8.6, this is an information report following the audited financial statements from our auditor's report. This has already been presented to the board, and so I think this is just a motion to receive. Seconded by Director Demare. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. 8.7, this is a status update regarding the Caroline Creek debris flow mitigation project. I think you're here just for questions.
I have one update of note.
Sure, great, thank you.
So thank you. This is your quarterly update. And just one thing, it's good news. Since the agenda was published, the project has received Dyke Maintenance Act approval. This project from the Inspector of Dykes. This is a key approval, and it's bringing us closer to issuing the invitation to tender for construction services. Thank you.
Thank you for all the work that you put into this. I think that's an understatement.
It is a team effort. The other members are here. So please also on to colleagues and the people in the community.
Thank you. Motion to receive, moved by Director Stoner, seconded by Director Demare. Comment? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Great. We're at 8.8, a request for decision regarding the open fire regulation in the SLRD. And we're answer question.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Rob Van Dorn, Regional Fire Chief with the SLRD. And I'm here today to answer any questions that the membership may have.
Questions?
I had one comment that just jumped out at me when I was reading through it, and I appreciate what you're trying to do and how complicated this is and how emotional everybody gets about it. But when I saw that the board directs staff to explore options for aligning open fire prohibitions across the region, I thought, actually, we don't necessarily want to be aligned because the conditions are so different in the different areas. So that was a silly direction to go to in the first place.
I think too, thanks for the feedback. It would be good to sort of further understand why there might be variation between open fire and smoke control prohibitions. And through those conversations, along with sort of just creating space for conversation, we'll be able to further clarify for the public why that occurs.
I also wondered, do we have a liaison with First Nations Emergency Services? I didn't see them listed here. And I wondered if that.
Well, I have liaisons in training at First Nations Emergency Services, but not so much for this specific topic, but that's something to explore.
Through the chair, the First Nations Emergency Social Services isn't involved in declaring fire events. It's the nations and partners themselves.
Right, the political leadership. Okay, thank you.
And through the chair, if I may, just in terms of the alignment piece, that was about just recognizing that a lot of the comments that we were getting from the public are about alignment within, not necessarily across the entire region. It was not the intent of that recommendation. It's about between, in Squamish, it could be Squamish Nation, within the SLRD, Crown Land, Parks, and so it's not, that was the intent of that recommendation.
We are easily confused.
And then through those conversations, through the chair, if I may, it's an opportunity to canvass for more support on issues that might reside on Crown land. If we do have like constant issues in particular areas, is getting more NRO or conservation officer support to address instances of risk.
Recommendation. Okay, moved by Director Stoner, second by Director Richmond. Further comments? Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
All in favor? Does anyone oppose? Motion carries. Okay, 9.1. I forwarded, and we've had several sessions available to local governments around the province regarding a local government act reform. This is being led by the Regional District of Nanaimo. Their chair and CAO have been working on this for quite a long time. Actually, several successive chairs have worked on this, and they have put together a survey to look at the recommendations that they're making as far as changes to the Local Government Act. This has gone through every area association and UBCM. They are asking for feedback. I sent this around. We've actually, I think Angela sent this out a few times. This is for you to provide your feedback if you're interested. And the deadline is Saturday. So that is that was it for my chair's verbal. Motion to receive. Moved by Director Pettengill, seconded by Director Mack. All in favor, any opposed, motion carries. There is a request from Director Birch Jones for partial reimbursement of a laptop as presented in the package. Heard that. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead.
Just comment, it does feel odd as a one-off. I understand we have policy, we're working on remuneration policy and some of these pieces, so I expect that in the future we'll have policy in place to deal with some of these things, but.
Wouldn't be captured in the remuneration bylaw, it would be captured in the procurement and purchasing policy.
Yeah, I guess there's a few, because we had talked about what do electoral area directors, for example, need to do their job and so on, so I'm just somewhere in that bunch of policies, some of this will be touched on, I would assume.
Thank you.
You move it? Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And okay, now we're in correspondence for action. 10.1 request for support from the Kamloops BC Cancer Care Center redesign.
This.
We could receive it or we can write.
No.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Just please, we have to write, they've provided us everything we need here, including the draft support letter. This is a really important letter to send off. It's crazy that we would set up the cancer center in a way that didn't provide all the services in one place, and it's just an important time to lobby for this.
Okay, so the motion is then Director Birch Jones suggests that we write the letter as attached.
Yes.
Seconded by Director Demare. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Request for funding from the Lillooet Elks Lodge, number 467, Bandstand Improvement Project. This money is coming from Area B, HILT funds. Would you like
I'd
to
like
make
to
that motion?
move, that from Area B PELT, we fund the Lillooet Elks Lodge number 467 in the amount of $8,918.34 towards the Lillooet Elks Bandstand.
Second.
Seconded by Director Demare. Comments or questions? Go ahead.
Just a question, sometimes these come, go to the electoral area directors meeting first and then come to us, and I'm just wondering, just for a bit of clarity about why it's being go there first or why it's here right away?
HILT comes here only.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we have sort of a refresher on why these funds go to where. Coming. Stay tuned. All right, with that, I will call a question. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. And 10.3, Pemberton Meadows Fire Association Operation Funding. And,
I'll move that, and it's from Area C amenity funds.
okay,
I'll second it.
seconded by Director Demare. Questions or comments?
Go ahead, Angela. Just in regards to this one, are we wanting to capture that, there would be a requirement for a funding agreement?
Yep.
As part of the resolution?
Yep. Go ahead, Heather.
On this one, just want to ensure and just flag that we don't want to do an up to on this one because cash flow and staff having to do them. Quite comfortable with the funding agreement.
Okay. More clear on this? Great. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. 10.4, request for funding from the Valley Community Society, personal protective equipment. And this is also coming from Area B HILT funds. Did you have staff coming in?
Mark is available if there's any
Does
questions.
anyone have any questions about this? No? Okay, great. Someone like to make that motion?
I'd like to make that motion.
Moved by Director Birchstone, seconded by Director Mack. Comment? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. A request for funding regarding the District of Lillooet Fire Department command truck outfitting. And this is also coming from Area B PELT funds.
I'd like to make a motion that Area B PELT funds in the amount of $13,030 go towards the Lillooet Fire Department, and this is towards outfitting the expenses of the new command truck and the various bells and whistles as listed. And this is just the Lillooet Fire Department and BC Wildfire Service and all the various fire smart activities and the different groups that we're all trying to work on fire prevention and mitigation and all the rest of it. So the fire department is a really important lead partner in what goes on in Area B, and so I'm really happy to provide something to them.
I'm happy to support it. I do have a question for Director Phillips. And we have a reciprocal agreement with District of Lillooet on this. As far as like the services agreement that we have with other municipalities and area.
We don't have any, formal agreements with the District of Lillooet.
Okay.
I know there is parcels with SLRD parcels that receive support from the District of Lillooet, that there is a cost center and tax position from that group and provide to the District of Lillooet for that service.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just didn't have that clarity. Thank you. Any other questions from anyone?
I'll second it.
Was there any second? Yeah. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 10.6 is a letter from the Furry Creek Community Association requesting attendance at their meeting tomorrow.
Motion to receive.
Great, thank you. Seconded, Director Mayor. All in favor, any opposed, motion carries. And any late business?
There is late business.
Well, there is two pieces of late business that made it into the late business package. Did you have something else over there? No. Okay. I think we have time. Plow through two more items. Okay, we're on 12.1. This is a correspondence for action. Requesting reinstatement of the Birkenhead River pedestrian and cycling bridge. We do have staff here to answer questions. If anyone has that question, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say like, the original bridge that was there was put in by the Terminal Wildlife Association. And with help from CRB Logging and some of their guys. So I think that the best thing for us to, this is quite a challenging operation. So I think we should just have Omar and his staff look into this and bring a report back to tell us how feasible it is and maybe a ballpark cost figure on it. I think that would be the best thing to do.
Director Richmond?
I don't know, before we go those steps, I know that there's been opposition in the past from the Owl Ridge community. Some people feel that it'll bring a whole bunch of traffic up that way. And I know there are a lot of mixed thoughts within Lillooet Nation about this, so. Before we go spending any staff time on it, I would like, if that was the direction we want to take. I want confirmation there's actually an appetite from Lillooet Nation to do this, which I don't think there is, but I can't say with certainty, so.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So
if there is a desire, personally, I'm happy to just receive this in the meantime. It's addressed to our MLA. So isn't it? There's this new, oh no, that's the wrong one, sorry. But yeah, I'm happy to receive it. We can respond that there's a lot of jurisdiction involved here if we want. I don't know if the rest of the board wants to pursue it or not, but yeah, if we do want to pursue it, the first step of stop would be Lillooet Nation.
Well, we need to have that information for sure.
So I think the motion is to receive and refer to staff.
Okay, I'll send it that.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm a little bit unclear as to what we're referring to staff to do.
The letter to do the work, to not work on the bridge, but to understand the feasibility of it. And the first stop is to discuss with the Lillooet Nation desire for this.
Yes, I think that, and I know this, there's actually an arc site at the south end of this bridge. So, and I do believe Director Richmond is correct in that that would be our first connect with Lillooet.
Great. Any other comment? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. And Brian Waddington Hut Repairs.
Yeah, I will move this request, and this will be coming also from areas the amenity funds. From the amenity funds accrued from the subdivision in Divine. So.
So do we add to that motion subject to confirmation of their nonprofit status, because our policies.
Yeah. Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Birch Jones. Comment? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And is there any notice of motion from anyone? We have none. Okay, I ask that we please move into closed, moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Stoner.